Model evaluation, very important. It's the core idea of machine learning. So the more parameters in our model, the more complexity we can learn. The more difficult problem that we can learn. So actually, there's a definition I should add, but it's called complexity. Complexity of the model. And there's a definition called the VC dimension, but I will introduce it in the future. So if your model is big, you have a large model, you have a large complexity. Big model, large model, large model. But you tend to, large model not always good, especially for small data. Of course, if you have enough data, it's good for big data. But for original data set, you tend to overfit. So in this example, it says that your model is so complexity is so large. Your model is so large that you can learn a very high polynomial curve. So you are able to fit all the data points here. But actually, the best linear equation is the black line. So although you overfit data, then you can achieve 100% accuracy. On training data set, okay? If there's a new data is coming, like here, right? New sample test data, your model cannot predict them because you overfit on your training data. So it's called overfitting. However, if your model is too small, still no good. Then you may underfitting, or you may underfit. Still a bad thing. You cannot learn the true model, prediction model. But today we have big data, right? So we have large language model. So if you have enough data, you have enough computing power, maybe overfitting is not a problem. So maybe our brains just overfit the world we know, right? We cannot understand beyond 3 dimensions, right? So here's a urban legend, tank. So technology advance usually comes from war or humanity. Anyway, in World War II, some scientists try to use perceptron to predict tank, right? And they try to train with the photo of scans. They try to identify tanks in hiding in the woods, but they originally got 100% accuracy, so everybody was very excited. They find the way to AI can detect tank, but after more training, it performs very bad on new images. Perform very bad on test sets. Also, they finally figure out the detector is just learn how the illumination, identify the light, the illumination of the photos, because the tank hiding, the picture is usually more dark, and the tanks in the open field is usually the light is more light. So they just find to learn the illumination of the photos. It's overfitting. But yeah, it's just a rumor. No one verified the story. So actually, we can decompose error into bias and variance. Bias and variance. So here's a good picture when you shoot. When you do shooting, here's the target. You can decompose your error into bias and variance. If you have low variance and low bias, then congratulations, you are a very accurate shooter. So all your results will focus on the center of the target. All right. However, if you have high variance, but your bias is low, then still the mean is very accurate in the center of the target, but however, it will be more dispersed, right? Separate around the center, so high variance. If you have a high bias, low variance, then all the shooting results will concentrate, but away from the center. Unfortunately, if you have a high bias and a high variance, then you will get this result, terrible results. And you can try to decompose. First, you calculate the expectation of the square error. Then maybe I. Oh, okay. Then you can decompose them into bias. Bias is the mean. Expectation or prediction is the mean of the prediction. The mean of the prediction. Mean of our y prime, minus the y is the bias, and the variance. It's a variance of your prediction. So y prime minus y prime mean is how you calculate standard deviation. Okay, plus some noise. It's not called noise, it's called irreducible error. So you still have some error no matter how hard you try to reduce the bias and the variance. Usually there are some irreducible error. So no matter how hard you train Tesla autonomous driving, still some error that may have accident, or maybe inevitable accident. So what we do is to select the size of the model. Complexity means size. Complexity or size. Size is more straightforward. So you can try to select the parameter of your model and try to find the best way. If your model is large, then tend to have lower bias but higher variance, right? Higher variance and lower bias. If your model is small, too small, then you will have low variance but high bias. So training is about when you design your model, you are trying to find the optimal complexity. However, today's model is usually very large, right? So how can you reduce the variance? Variance, you can add the regularization to reduce the variance, right? That's why we add regular. Yeah, I can complete it, to reduce the variance, right? Okay, model selection. So it's model selection. In practice, we just how can we find the validation data? Maybe one straightforward way is to use Q testing data, but you can't do that. It's considered a little bit cheat. Just a little. So don't tune on your test data, then otherwise you will lose the true ability of your model. So how can we do? We just try to split part of the training data. It's usually called validation data. So you should never link test data information into the model. But we can tune the hyperparameters like the size of our model or regularization weights on validation data set. So it will better generate the model to future unseen model. So pretend we split. I didn't say it's part of training. So it's a total training data. We just split part of the model is validation set. Pretend we never see this part of data, right? So but simple validation data set is another topic. We are not sure if our sample can represent the original distribution of the training data, right? So best way to split the data into multiple parts and try to tune on different validation set. Try to tune your parameters on different validation set and find best hyperparameters. Find the best size of your model. So finally, you can maybe average the prediction score. But finally, you can train your final model, use all the data because it's all part of the training data. A common strategy is first try to overfit with bigger model, and then try to downsize the model. Try to overfit to see how much you can do. But for small data set, it usually means 100% accuracy, right? So the more complexity the model has, the more quickly it can model the training data, but more successful to overfitting. More successful to overfitting. Okay, so but usually we can use a bigger model to overfit. This is error lower is better, and then try to downsize it or add regularization term. So, oh yeah, so here answer the question, how did you add regularization term to Keras? So there are two ways you can add regularization term to each layer. Yeah, create a regulation and add a weight. Usually it's as a very small weight of the term. Don't put too large weight. And then we add to each layer. So original model, the validation loss. So how can you observe overfitting? For overfitting, when you train longer, train more epochs. When you train longer, original your validation loss goes down first. However, at some point, it start to overfit your error. It's loss. Your error will increase. Error increase. It usually means overfit. Your error on validation set increase. So sorry, let me remind. If you have bigger model, more complexity, your training loss will always go down. Always go down. Always go down. However, your validation loss on the validation set, right? Suppose it's unseen, right? It's pretend to be the training test data. It will go down first, and then the error will go up. Just like the picture we have seen before, right? Just like this one. So the total error increase. When you train longer, your validation error increase. Then that's overfitting. You overfit training data. So you can end the regression turn. Another trick for deep learning, only, is try to randomize dropout, mask out, setting to 0 of the number of output features of the layer during training. So it's try to mask out some output of the layer, make it learning more difficult. And try to apply the activation at training time. At test time, the activator is unchanged. So try to make learning more difficult, right? Mask out some output. And then it's proposed by Hinton. So you can add dropout. Dropout 0.5 means you mask out, say 50% of the output randomly, and you hope the rest unmasked data will be more reliable in the future. So randomly drop out the output. Drop out the output. It's less overfit. Okay. So finally, let's review the machine learning workflow. First, define the problem and create a data set. The problem is continuous or discrete, is classification or regression, and then choose the right measure of success metrics like accuracy, mean absolute error, and the evaluation protocol for loss function, pro cross entropy, or square loss. The loss function, you will use the loss function to calculate the gradient, and then normalize the data, pre-process the data, actually pre-process, and develop a model that does better than a baseline. You can use a simple algorithm like a KNN as a baseline. Your model need to be better than simple algorithm, otherwise it's not useful. Then you can scale up a large model to overfit, or then regularize your model into hyperparameters. That's the common machine learning workflow. So yeah, I should remove this page. But for deep learning, here's the last layer activation function. For binary classification, as we have seen, is in deep learning is use sigmoid as activation function. It's a logistic regression, right? And you can use a binary cross entropy. And then the multi-class, like MNIST classification, we use softmax, right? And the categorical cross entropy. This is a rare problem because it's not easy for model to identify multi-label in one image or one data, one sample. And the regression, the special, what is special here is that the regression does not have less layer activation function. Why? Because the output is continuous, right? So you don't need to activation function, it will convert to 0 and 1. But if you want a continuous value between 0 and 1, it's come back to logistic regression, and you can put sigmoid, the same as binary classification. You can use both mean square error or binary cross entropy to as a loss function.